Emily Forrester was 8 years old the day she vanished, and no one in the quiet town of Cedarbrook Hollow would ever forget it. The morning had started like any other in late May mist curling low through the trees. The smell of pine and dew settling over the sleepy Pacific Northwest town. The Forresters lived on the edge of a cul-de-sac at the far end of Willowmere Lane, a street bordered by thick woods on one side and a gentle slope leading to a creek on the other. Their home was modest but warm, with faded red shutters and a white porch where potted daisies bloomed year after year. Laura Forrester, Emily's mother, had been in the kitchen preparing grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. It was just past noon when she glanced up from the stovetop and realized she hadn't heard the usual sing-song of her daughter's voice or the clatter of bike wheels bouncing over the driveway's uneven pavement. She turned off the burner and stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on a towel. "Emily," she called out, her voice slicing through the stillness. No answer. The bike was gone. So was the small blue helmet with the unicorn decal. Laura's brow furrowed. Emily never went far. Maybe to the edge of the woods to look for frogs, or next door to the Wilkersons' house to show off her stickers. But she always told her mother. First, by 12:47 p.m., Laura had knocked on every door within shouting distance. By 1:15, she was sobbing into the phone with 911, and by nightfall, the town of Cedarbrook Hollow had begun its first full-scale search in nearly 20 years. The news spread fast. Volunteers came out with flashlights and dogs. Helicopters circled. Overhead, they searched the woods, the creek, the storm drains. They called her name into the wind until their voices cracked. But Emily Forrester had vanished without a trace. 12 years passed. Cedarbrook Hollow grew. The edges of the town were no longer raw with grief, though scars remained. Emily's face had once graced flyers taped to telephone poles and storefront windows. Over time, those were replaced by real estate signs and Airbnb listings. What had once been a tragedy was now a story, an old one, mystery never solved. Laura never moved. Her husband, Jason, left 6 months after Emily disappeared. He'd blamed Laura for turning away at the wrong moment, for cooking lunch instead of watching the yard. Maybe he blamed himself too, but he'd never said. He packed a duffel bag, kissed her cheek without looking her in the eyes, and drove to Seattle. She hadn't seen him since. In the years that followed, Laura stayed in Cedarbrook Hollow. The house, once filled with Emily's giggles and crayon drawings, became a mausoleum of memories. Laura worked as a pastry chef at a bakery called the Morning Roost. She woke at 4 a.m., baked, smiled for customers, and went home to a house that always felt too quiet. And then, on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday, her phone rang. She had just come home from work, the smell of cinnamon still clinging to her clothes. She hadn't even taken off her apron. The screen flashed a name she hadn't seen in over a decade, Detective Dean Harlandot. Laura stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Hello? Miss Forrester?" came the deep, familiar voice. "Good afternoon, Detective Harland." Her throat tightened. "It's been a long time." "Yes," he said. "Too long. I'm calling because something's come up." "About Emily." Laura sat down slowly at the edge of the couch. Her hands began to shake. "What? What is it?" "I'd rather tell you in person." "Can I come by?" She could barely get the words out. "Yes, please. Of course." The knock at the door came 20 minutes later. Detective Harland had aged. His dark hair was streaked with gray. The lines around his eyes were deeper. But his presence hadn't changed. Calm, solid, steady. Laura let him in, her heart hammering. "We received a call from a construction crew working on a garage renovation. They were tearing up concrete for plumbing access," Harland said. "They found something buried underneath." Laura stared at him. "A pink bicycle," he said softly, "with a white plastic basket. Streamers on the handlebars." She couldn't breathe. "Emily's." "We think so. We need you to come and confirm." The property was on Oak Ridge Road, a few blocks from Laura's house. She drove past it nearly every day without ever noticing it. Was an unassuming cedar-sided rental listed on Airbnb. The garage floor had been cracked open by jackhammers, revealing a pit nearly 3 feet deep. In it was a small rusted pink bicycle. Even with grime and dirt caked across, Laura knew it instantly. She stepped forward, trembling. "That's hers," she whispered. "You're sure? The streamers, purple and pink. She loved those." Detective Harlan nodded gravely. The garage was sealed as a crime scene. Forensics were combing through the soil, photographing the bicycle from every angle. No human remains were found, no clothing, just the bike. Buried deliberately beneath the concrete, Laura stood frozen, staring down at the one piece of her daughter she hadn't touched in 12 years. For the first time in over a decade, something changed inside her. A spark ignited a fragile, dangerous hope. Later that night, she posted about the discovery on the Missing Children's Support Forum. It had been her online refuge for years. She uploaded a photo of the bike, explained what had happened, signed off with trembling fingers. She expected messages of comfort. She didn't expect what came next. A private message. No username, no profile photo. Inside, an image she recognized. Immediately, an old photo of Emily on that very bicycle. But it had been grotesquely altered. Her daughter's smiling face replaced with the head of a butchered pig. Beneath it, a grainy video of someone hacking into raw meat, wrapping it in plastic, and a message, "Your daughter's as dead as this pig. Just accept it." Laura dropped her phone. A cry escaped her lips. The room spun. She stumbled to the bathroom and vomited into the sink, her body racked with tremors. It had to be a sick joke. A troll. Someone who saw the news and wanted to be cruel? But the image of the video wasn't random. It had details only someone connected to Emily's case would know. That photo had never been public. She had shared it only once, years ago. In a private forum post, she sent everything to Detective Harlan. The reply was immediate. "Where did you get this?" "I just received it," she texted back. "I think someone's watching me." Within an hour, a tech team had been dispatched to her home. The video was being analyzed. The account that sent it was untraceable. Created that day, deleted. An hour later. But something in the footage stood out, a flicker of alpine pine trees visible through a window. The kind that didn't grow in Cedarbrook Hollow. "I think it might have been filmed in Europe," Harlan said. "Maybe even Switzerland." "Isn't that where the property owner lives?" Laura asked. "Vance Holloway." "Yes," Laura leaned against the wall, cold sweat running down her neck. "What does this mean?" Harlan's face was unreadable. "It means we're not done." In the days that followed, the investigation widened. Every guest who had ever stayed in the Airbnb was being contacted. Ernest Mallory, the property's longtime caretaker, was brought in for questioning. He was defensive, jittery, claimed he knew nothing, that he was just following orders. But Laura didn't believe him. And early one morning when she couldn't sleep, she got into her car. She drove toward the bakery but slowed near the Airbnb. A light flickered inside the supposedly sealed-off house. A white van was parked near the garage. Then movement. A figure carrying something heavy into the van. Laura's breath caught. It was Ernest. She didn't call the police. Not yet. Instead, she followed him. The chase took her down Cedar Ridge Road, past sleeping houses and mist-covered woods, through silence and growing dread. She followed the van into a forested cul-de-sac. Whispering Pines Lane, she parked far back, hidden by trees, and watched Ernest unloaded a metal barrel from the van, smoke, burning, then dash. Something worse. 3 trips. A red industrial trolley. Heavy loads. Black bags. He was moving something. Something. Human. Laura's hand trembled as she called Detective Harlan. The signal was weak. Static garbled her words, but she stayed, watched, photographed, documented, until finally, Ernest drove off again. This time the police were waiting. They stopped his van at the edge of town, drew their weapons, opened the rear doors, and inside 3 unconscious women. Alive Emily was one of them. Her face older, thinner, paler, but hers. Laura collapsed to her knees. tears falling harder than they ever had before. She had found her. Daughter Emily was alive. But the story, Emily's story, was only just beginning. The first time Emily opened her eyes in 12 years, she didn't recognize the ceiling above her. It was white and sterile, with a faint hum coming from somewhere near her head. Tubes were in her arm. Her mouth was dry. A beeping sound matched the slow, steady rhythm of her heart. For a moment, she didn't move. She just stared, unsure if this was another hallucination, another test, another one of Ernest's sick tricks. She had dreamed of escape so many times that the dreams had stopped feeling different from reality. But then she turned her head, and she saw her mom. The word rasped from her throat like sandpaper. Foreign but real. Laura was already at her side, her face lined with tears and exhaustion, lit with something Emily hadn't seen since she was a child. "Hope, sweetheart," Laura said, clutching her daughter's hand. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Emily's eyes fluttered, her lids heavy. The light was too bright, and her body felt too heavy. "Where am I?" "You're in the hospital. You're safe now." She tried to sit up, but her muscles didn't listen. "Ernest? Gone?" Laura said. "He's been arrested. He can't hurt you anymore." Emily stared at her mother as if trying to decide whether she believed her. Then she whispered, "Kayla, Jules, they're here too." Laura said gently, "They're safe. Unconscious still, but stable. The doctors are taking care of them." Emily's eyes closed again, and this time, when she drifted into sleep, it wasn't out of fear or sedation, but release. Detective Harlan stood just outside the hospital room, watching through the glass. His arms were crossed, the manila folder under one elbow worn soft from too many hours of being held. His brow was furrowed not in frustration but in focus. He'd waited 12 years for this. Laura came out quietly, pulling the door closed behind her. "She's awake," she whispered. "I know. I saw she knew me." Harlan smiled. It was a rare expression for him. "I'm not surprised. That kind of bond doesn't disappear, not even after this long." They sat down on the chairs outside the room. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and coffee. Nurses passed quietly, casting glances toward the room that had suddenly become the center of a town's attention. She asked about the other girls, Kayla and Juliana. Harlan nodded. "We've confirmed their identities. Their families are en route. Both girls went missing around the same time as Emily within a 2-year span." Laura's hands twisted in her lap. "He kept them that whole time? All 3 of them?" "Yes. We found a concealed storm bunker beneath his house, soundproofed, lined with false walls, no windows. He kept them like animals. He kept them like captives," Harlan said quietly. "But they're alive. That's what matters now." There was silence between them for a few moments. Then Laura asked, "Do you think she'll ever be the same again?" "No," Harlan said honestly. "But that doesn't mean she won't be okay." The media didn't take long to swarm by. Noon the next day, vans from Seattle and Portland had parked themselves at the edge of Cedar Brook Hollow. Porters stood on sidewalks, broadcasting live in front of the property where the bike had been found. They called it the Concrete Clue, the Garage of Secrets. Some even dubbed Ernest the Caretaker Butcher, though there was no evidence yet of any killings. Laura refused all interviews. Emily hadn't said more than a few sentences since. Waking, Detective Harlan had set up a temporary station. At the hospital, coordinating with federal agencies, digital forensics experts, and international law enforcement, Ernest's connections were deeper than they had suspected. Files on his laptop hinted at dark web forums, encrypted conversations, and plans that went beyond what anyone had imagined. He was getting ready to move them, Harlan told Laura. He had connections to a trafficking ring in Eastern Europe. The timing of everything, the bike being found, you posting online, him showing up in the middle of the night, it wasn't coincidence. He was about to disappear with them forever. "Why keep them all these years?" Laura asked. "Why? Not sell them sooner? 'Cause he believed he was their guardian," Harlan said grimly. He called himself their rescuer. In his journals, he described them as broken girls needing structure. He convinced himself he was saving them. Laura's voice shook. "Saving them from what?" "From you. From me." from the world. In the hospital, Emily slowly began to speak. At first, it was just basic details. Yes, she remembered the day she was taken. No, she didn't try to run at least not for the first few days. Ernest had drugged her, lied to her, told her there had been an explosion, that her mother was dead, that the outside world was dangerous. Sometimes I believed him, she told Detective Harland, her voice almost inaudible. When you're alone long enough, you forget what's real. Did he ever hurt you? Harland asked. Emily shook her head. Not like that. Not physically. He hit me once when I tried to get out. But mostly, he just controlled everything. Our meals, our books, our sleep. Called us his daughters. Told us we were chosen. Did he let you talk to each other? Eventually. First, he made us stay in separate rooms. Kayla and I shared a wall. We'd tap messages through it. When Jules came, we made a game out of it. We had a code. He couldn't break it. Harlan nodded. You survived. Emily didn't reply for a long time. Then she said, we never stopped hoping someone would find us. Not really, not deep down. That evening, Laura sat by Emily's bed and read her a story, not a children's book. Emily had long outgrown those, but a novel they had once started together. Charlotte's Web, it had been. Emily's favorite. I don't remember the beginning, Emily said. Laura smiled softly. Then we'll start from chapter 1, she read aloud, her voice steady, even though her hands trembled. Emily closed her eyes, but she wasn't asleep. She was listening. By chapter 3, Laura paused. Do you want me to stop? No, Emily whispered. Keep going. The following morning, Kayla Bennett woke up. She screamed, at first disoriented and wild with terror, but calmed when she saw nurses around her instead of Ernest. When they brought her mother in an hour later, her cries turned to sobs. Juliana. Ramirez regained consciousness the next day. The 3 girls, now women, were kept in separate rooms. The doctors began organizing group therapy sessions. Laura watched from the glass as they sat together, shoulders hunched, eyes flickering between one another. They hadn't seen sunlight in years. Their skin was pale, their eyes sensitive, but they were alive, and they were starting to heal it. It was 4 days after the rescue when the truth about Ernest's plan came out. A flash drive found in his van contained a set of documents, transaction records, communications with a buyer known only by the alias Dogstar, a scheduled rendezvous in southern Canada, coordinates, a date. 1 week from the day the girls were rescued, they were hours away from disappearing forever. Harlan told Laura, his jaw clenched. 1 more night and they would have been gone. Laura didn't reply. She couldn't. The words just echoed in her head. Gone forever until. They made her physically sick. She walked out of the room and found the nearest bathroom. She locked the door and sat on the floor, knees to her chest. Trembling, she had found Emily, but she had almost lost her again. That night, Emily asked her mother, Did you think I was dead? Laura blinked. Every day. And every day I told myself I couldn't believe it. I don't remember your face. Not the way it was, just the photo Ernest had. The one from the news. Laura looked at her hands. I used to sit in your room and talk to you. Every week. I'd tell you what the weather was like, what the bakery smelled like that morning, what shows were on TV. Emily didn't respond at first. Then, quietly, I heard you sometimes. In dreams. Laura's heart broke open. I want to go home, Emily said. You will, Laura promised. As soon as the doctors say it's safe, Emily stared at the window. Will the house look the same? Not exactly. I turned your room into an office. But your drawings are still on the wall. I couldn't take them down. I want to see them. You will. Later that week, a hearing was scheduled. Ernest Mallory was arraigned under tight security. He pled not guilty. The courtroom was packed. Porters scribbled furiously. Photographers waited outside. Laura sat in the front row. Ernest wouldn't look at her. Harland leaned in and whispered, he's trying to seem detached, unbothered. Laura didn't care. When Ernest was escorted out, she stood not because. She wanted to intimidate him, but because she refused to sit quietly anymore. He glanced up. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Laura saw fear in his. Emily was released from the hospital 2 weeks after the discovery. She walked slowly, leaning on a cane for balance, her legs still weak. The hospital gave her a bag of medication, a binder full of therapy appointments, and a list of specialists. But the most important thing was the key her mother placed in her hand. "To our house," Laura said. "Still yours? Always yours." Emily looked at it for a long time before whispering, "Let's go home." The front door hadn't been opened in months, but Laura had cleaned for days before Emily's return. Still, it felt like dust clung to the very walls, as if the house had aged differently in Emily's absence, slower in some rooms. Esther in others, they stood in the entryway for a long moment. Emily looked around as if seeing through time, her hand tightening around the strap of her overnight bag. "It smells the same," she whispered. Laura tried to speak, but her throat tightened. She only managed to nod. Emily walked in slowly, each step uncertain. The wooden floors creaked beneath her feet, familiar but foreign. She stopped near the staircase and turned her head. Was the painting always crooked? Laura looked. The landscape of cedar trees above the stairs tilted slightly to the left. "Yes," she said. "You used to smack it with your backpack every day after school." Emily gave a breath of something that wasn't quite laughter, but it wasn't nothing either. They climbed the stairs together. Laura opened the door at the end of the hall and stepped aside. "This used to be your room. I couldn't keep it. The same? I'm sorry." Emily stepped inside. The walls were beige now, not the sunshine yellow she had begged for when she was 6. The stuffed animals were gone. Her pink dresser had been replaced by a desk and printer, but above the desk hung 4 framed pieces of paper, her old drawings, curling at the edges. One of a house, one of a unicorn, one of her and her mom, one of her bike. Emily walked toward them, lifting her fingers to the glass. "They're still here." Laura stood in the doorway, her voice soft. "I couldn't let them go." Emily sat on the edge of the bed. "It's okay that it changed," she said, brushing her hand across the new quilt. "I changed too." For the first few days, Emily barely left the house. Crowds gathered outside, sometimes reporters, curious locals, old neighbors wanting to check in. Laura posted a sign on the front door. "No interviews. No cameras. No visitors." Harland had assigned a cruiser to patrol the block every few hours. But it didn't stop the letters. Envelopes slipped through the mail slot, some with well wishes, some with cruel questions. One read simply, "What kind of mother lets her child disappear?" Laura shredded that one without showing Emily, but Emily saw the others. She sat on the couch one morning, reading a card from a woman in Ohio who had also lost her child. The handwriting was shaky, the return address was missing. It ended with, "We never stop hoping, even when we stop searching." Emily held the card for a long time. "She's right," she finally said. "Even when I thought I'd never leave that place, I never stopped hoping." On the 3rd morning, Emily insisted on walking to the corner store. "I need to be outside," she said. Laura hesitated. "Are you sure? You'll be recognized." "No," Emily said, pulling on a baseball cap. "Let them look." The town had changed. New homes had been built. Old shops were gone. But the path to the market was the Sama-cracked sidewalk shaded by fir trees, the same bakery window with the rotating tray of cinnamon rolls, the same squeaky bike rack out front. They passed the Wilkersons' house. It had been painted blue. The swing set Emily once played on was gone. A different little girl now rode a scooter in the driveway. She glanced up and waved politely. Emily waved back, her hand trembling. Inside the store, the manager, older woman, with a mole near her lip, froze behind the register. Laura stepped between them instinctively. But Emily touched her arm. "It's okay." The woman came around the counter. "Emily Forrester?" she asked in a voice trembling with disbelief. Emily nodded. The woman burst into tears. I prayed for you, she said, gripping Emily's hands. Every day for 12 years. Laura watched her daughter smile gently. Thank you, Emily said. I think it helped. That afternoon, a therapist named Renee Temple arrived for an in-home session. Renee had kind eyes and a quiet voice. She asked no questions at first, just sat with Emily in the living room, 2 cups of tea between them, and let the silence stretch comfortably. After 20 minutes, Emily asked, Do you want me to talk about it? Only if you want to, Renee said. I'm not here to make you relive anything. I'm here so you don't have to carry it all alone. Emily looked down into her tea. He made us call him Father. Renee didn't flinch. How did that make you feel? I hated it, Emily said. But I said it anyway. Kayla couldn't say it. She used to cry. Jules just whispered it. He punished her for that. Kind of punishment? Emily paused. He made her sleep outside the bunker one night. In the crawl space. No light, no blanket. Just locked her in and left. Renee's jaw tightened, but she nodded. We counted days by cracks in the ceiling, Emily said. We made calendars from shadows. We told each other stories at night so we wouldn't forget words. She closed her eyes. I can still hear him walking upstairs. Every step. Like thunder. By the end of the week, Emily had spoken to Harland. Again this time, without trembling, she answered his questions directly. Pausing only when memories overwhelmed her, she told him about the first night. The drink he gave her. The way the world blurred. She told him about the moment she realized she wasn't going home. About the times Ernest cried in front of them, saying the world was evil. That their parents had abandoned them, that he was all they had. About the false fire drills, the rules, the stories he made up to keep them scared. He had files on us, Emily said. Printed out. Things we said, things we did wrong, things he thought our parents had done. He told me my mom burned dinner once and left me to cry on the porch. I never remembered that, but he said it so often I thought maybe it was true. Harlan shook his head. He wanted you to believe you were unwanted, Emily nodded. When that stopped working, he threatened to separate us. Said he'd put Kayla in another house, that we'd never see her again. We started behaving after that. Harlan asked the last question softly. Do you think he ever planned to let you go? Emily didn't answer for a long time. Then, no. I think he wanted us to forget weed. Ever been anywhere else? One evening, Laura sat on the front porch while Emily painted her toenails, something they used to do every Sunday afternoon. When Emily was little, they said little, just existed in the quiet comfort of each other's. Presents! Suddenly Emily asked, What was it like? After I disappeared? Laura looked up, startled. What do you mean? Did people blame you? Laura hesitated. Some did. Your father did. Emily nodded slowly. I wondered. He left 6 months after you vanished. Did he ever try to come back? No. Emily didn't speak for a long while, and she said, I remember being mad at you that morning. Laura's chest tightened. Why? You wouldn't let me go past the creek. I threw a fit, remember? Laura smiled faintly. I remember. You slammed the screen door so hard it bounced back and hit you. Emily laughed a real laugh. The first in days. It was short, but it echoed down the porch like a chime. I thought about that a lot, she said. Worried it would be the last thing you remembered. Laura reached for her hand. I remembered your laughter, not your tantrums. Emily's smile faded slowly. Do you think I'm broken? What? Laura's voice cracked. No, I think you're brave. One night, Laura woke up to the sound of sobbing. She found Emily curled in the hallway, knees to her chest, face buried in her arms. Laura sat beside her without a word. Wrapping her arms around her daughter, Emily whispered, I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear him, see the door shutting. I feel the dark. Laura rocked her gently. It's okay. I'm here. You're home. Emily sobbed harder. What if I never feel normal again? Laura's own tears came silently. Then we'll make a new normal. Together. 10 days after Emily returned, Laura found a letter on their porch. No postage. It's just a handwritten note tucked into the screen door. It was from a neighbor, an elderly man who had lived 3 blocks over when Emily was taken in it. He wrote, "I saw a white van parked behind the old Holloway property 12 years ago. I told myself it was nothing. Told myself I was imagining things. I've regretted that every day since. I'm sorry I didn't speak up." Laura brought the note inside and showed it to Harland. He read it twice. Then he said quietly, "It matches the timeline." "Could he have helped?" Laura asked. Harland sighed. Maybe not. People saw things. They just didn't connect. Them. Emily looked at the note that night. After a long moment, she said, "Sometimes silence is the loudest thing in the world." At the end of the second week, the FBI released a statement confirming Ernest Mallory had ties to at least 2 other cases in neighboring states. Both involved girls who had gone missing in the early 2000s. One body had never been found. The other was discovered in a shallow grave 3 years later. No identified suspect until now. Emily saw the report on the news. She watched it all the way through, then stood up, went to the window, and stared out at the street. Finally, she said, "I want to testify." Laura turned. "Are you sure?" "Yes. I want to face him. I want to say it out loud. For Kayla. For Jules. For the girls who didn't make it." Laura felt her knees weaken. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. We'll do it together." The first time Emily stepped inside the courthouse, she felt the floor shift beneath her feet, not literally, but something inside her tilted. The echo of footsteps, the scent of disinfectant and old paper, the cold fluorescent lights, it all pressed in like walls that knew too much. Detective Harlan met her in the hallway outside the courtroom. He wasn't in uniform. No badge, no visible weapon. Just a suit that looked like it had been tailored 10 years ago, and hands he kept in his pockets to hide the tension in them. "You okay, Whiteham?" he asked quietly. Emily nodded. "I will be." Laura stood beside her daughter, silent but strong, her fingers intertwined with Emily's. "Jules and Kayla won't be here," Harlan said. "Their doctors thought the pressure would be too much." Emily didn't seem surprised. "They'll talk when they're ready." He led them down the corridor. The pretrial hearing wasn't open to the public, but reporters lined the benches outside the courtroom like vultures. Cameras weren't allowed past the doors, but still, Emily kept her head down. Inside, Ernest Mallory sat behind a long wooden table, flanked by his attorney and 2 armed officers. His orange jumpsuit was wrinkled. His hair had thinned further. He looked older, smaller than Emily remembered, but the eyes, that peculiar glassy vacancy, hadn't changed. He looked up only once. When he saw Emily, he didn't smile, didn't speak. Just stared. Emily didn't flinch. The judge entered the courtroom and called the proceedings to order. Ernest's attorney requested a psychiatric evaluation, claimed his client was mentally unstable and under extreme duress. During the years in question, Harlan leaned toward Emily and whispered, "Standard defense tactic. Don't let it rattle you." Didn't, not outwardly. But when the judge granted the psychiatric review and scheduled the full trial for 6 months later, just something behind Emily's eyes went dim. Outside the courtroom, reporters clamored for a statement. Laura moved in front of her daughter. "No comment," she said firmly. But Emily took a step forward. She looked at the nearest camera and spoke clearly. Her voice strong despite the tremor in her hands. "I was held underground for 12 years. He told me the world had forgotten me. I want everyone to know he was wrong." Then she turned and walked away. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above her. Laura sat in the hallway outside. Her door, just like she had when Emily was little and afraid of thunder. "I heard him," Emily said through the door. In the courtroom, breathing. Laura closed her eyes, the sound of her daughter's voice 1,000 times heavier than silence. "Do you want me to sit with you?" Emily hesitated. "Can I stay in your room tonight?" Laura got up instantly. Emily curled up on the far side of the bed, her back to the wall. Laura pulled the blanket up to her daughter's shoulder and lay beside her, listening to her breath slow. "Do you think he dreamed about us?" Emily asked. "I don't know," Laura whispered. "I hope he didn't. I hope he forgot we were real, that we haunted him in silence." Laura reached for her hand under the covers. You don't haunt people, Emily. You survive them. Therapy became routine, twice a week at first, then more. Some sessions were with Renee at the house, others at the hospital with Kayla and Juliana. When they were strong enough, together they pieced memories into timelines. They mapped out the bunker on paper, described its every wall, where Ernest had stored the food, where the vent had whistled, where the water heater had leaked and Ernest cursed at it for hours. They remembered the birthdays Ernest let them celebrate with slices of stale cake and plastic beads. The notebooks they were allowed to write in later destroyed. The rules, the songs they whispered, the tap codes, the hiding place under the loose tile in the corner. They described the moments they thought about giving up and the ones when they didn't. The FBI's investigation expanded. Ernest's name appeared. On work logs from 6 states, he had held jobs in construction, plumbing, utility contracting, always short-term, always just enough to be overlooked. He moved frequently, rented cars, used burner phones, changed mailing addresses. One site in Montana matched the description. Of a case gone cold in 2003, a girl named Leslie Dorr had vanished from a park 5 miles from where Ernest had been employed. Her remains had never been found. Another case in Idaho, similar circumstances. A different girl, another missing bicycle. They were beginning to see a pattern, but no one had lived until Emily, until Kayla, until Juliana. One afternoon, Juliana sat beside Emily on the bench outside the hospital. They wore sunglasses and hooded sweatshirts. Trying to be invisible even though the world still watched, Juliana's voice was a whisper. Do you ever miss it? Emily turned her head slowly. What? The quiet? The schedule? The rules? Emily didn't answer right away. I don't miss him, she said finally, but I miss knowing what each day would be. Juliana nodded. Out here, it's too big sometimes. I know. Juliana looked at the sky. Do you think we'll ever be okay? Emily hesitated. Then, maybe we won't be okay in the old way, but maybe we can be okay in a new way. Juliana wiped her face with the sleeve of her hoodie. Then, she reached over and squeezed Emily's hand. At home, Emily began to paint. Laura bought her a set of acrylics and a blank canvas. At first, Emily just looked at it. For hours, then she sketched, then color. She painted the old creek, the bike with the purple streamers, the tree she used to climb. One morning, Laura found her asleep at the kitchen table, her head resting beside a canvas still wet with paint. It was a portrait of the 3 girls holding hands, standing in a field of flowers. Laura kissed her head and left the painting right. Where it was, Harlan visited often, not just to ask questions, but because Emily trusted him now, he told her. The International Task Force had seized data from the online trafficking ring Ernest was tied to. Dozens of IP addresses, hidden sites, deep web operations. The case had widened beyond anything they'd expected. You saved more than yourself, he said one evening. You exposed a network. Emily didn't smile. It wasn't just me. It was I. No, but you spoke up. You stood in court, and more girls will be found because of that. Emily looked at him, her face unreadable. I still feel like I'm waiting for the door to lock. Harlan's voice softened. It won't. Not ever. Again, months passed. The leaves changed. Fall settled over Cedar Brook Hollow. Halloween came and went quietly. Thanksgiving arrived with silent gratitude and too much food. Emily began to take longer walks. She helped at the bakery a few hours a week, just frosting cupcakes. Nothing. Public facing. The warmth of ovens, the scent of sugar and yeast, reminded her of something simple. Something safe. One morning, she rode a bike for the first time. It wasn't the same pink one. That was still in evidence. Sealed in a plastic crate, cataloged, and photographed. This one was blue. Gift from a local support group. Laura cried, watching her ride it down the quiet street, her hair blowing behind her like a banner. Emily didn't fall. The trial date approached. Jury selection began. The media returned. Coverage surged. Laura was asked again and again for interviews. She declined them all, but Emily prepared. She practiced her statement, read every word aloud in the mirror, changed the phrasing. Cut pieces that felt too raw. Harland. Arranged security. A private entrance. Counselor in the courtroom at all times. You don't have to testify, he reminded her, but Emily insisted. This is my story, she said. No one else gets to tell it. The night before the trial, Laura made Emily's favorite dinner mac and cheese with garlic breadcrumbs and roasted carrots. They sat at the table like they used to, eating slowly, talking about everything except the trial. After dinner, Laura brought out a small box. I've been holding on to this, she said, for a long time. Inside was Emily's charm bracelet, one Laura had given her on her 8th birthday. Each charm added every year, a butterfly, a book, a star. A cupcake, the 5th charm, a tiny silver bicycle, had never been added. Laura placed it in Emily's palm. I kept it all these years, she whispered, hoping one day you'd come back and wear it. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She didn't say anything. She just reached across the table and hugged her mother. The next morning, he walked into the courthouse together, hand in hand, and this time, when Ernest saw Emily, didn't look victorious or smug. He looked terrified, and that more than any verdict was justice already beginning. The courtroom was cold, not from the temperature, though the air conditioning hummed faintly overhead, but from the way silence settled like frost over every bench and corner. As the bailiff called the room to order, and the judge took his seat, a hush fell that was more than respectful. It was reverent. Heavy. Final dot. Emily sat at the front, her palms resting flat on her skirt, her back straight. Her eyes forward. Laura sat behind her. Harlan stood against the side wall, arms crossed, nodding once when Emily glanced his way. A silent reminder. You're not alone. The prosecutor, composed woman named Shannon Kirky, Roseanne addressed the jury. For 12 years, Emily Forrester was held underground. For 12 years, her life was taken from her freedom, her voice, her identity. This case is not about confusion, is not about mental instability, is about control, obsession, and the deliberate. Sustained captivity of 3 children who grew into women beneath a stranger's house. Across the aisle, Ernest Mallory sat unmoving. His expression was blank, but his hands fidgeted under the table, fingertips rubbing against each other like he was counting something. When Shannon turned to gesture toward Emily, their eyes met. Emily didn't look away. She stared him down until he blinked. Emily's testimony came on the 2nd day of the trial. The court allowed the session to be closed to the press. Cameras were not permitted in the room. But the hallway outside still buzzed with reporters. Headlines updated in real time, each trying to outdo the other. Girl lost for 12 years testifies against her captor from the bunker to the bench. Emily Forrester speaks inside. The judge gave Emily a nod. Take your time. Speak clearly. You may begin when you're ready. She stood, walked slowly to the witness stand, and adjusted the microphone. I was 8 when I met him. Ernest. I didn't know his name then. He said he was a builder. Said he had kittens in the garage. I liked kittens. She paused, her voice steady but not cold. He gave me a juice box. Wait, I'll drink it. I don't remember what happened next. She recounted waking up in the bunker. The darkness. The walls. The rules. Her voice wavered, but never cracked. He told me the world outside had ended, that my mother had died in an explosion, that the air was dangerous. She looked directly. At the jury, I believed him for a long time, because when you're a child, you believe the person who feeds you, even if they're a liar. She spoke of Kayla, of Juliana, of the punishments and the lessons, of how they survived by whispering stories in the dark, by counting days through tiny holes in the ceiling vent, by hiding drawings under the mattress. He gave us notebooks to write in, but he always read them if we wrote something he didn't. Like he burned them. She paused again, her hands trembling, but we started using symbols, ones he couldn't read. We told each other stories with them, made plans, promised we'd leave someday. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge's expression had softened. Eventually, he stopped watching so closely. He thought we believed him, that he'd won. It's what kept him lazy, complacent. Her mouth tightened. He lost because he underestimated what girls do in the dark. When she stepped down from the stand, the room remained quiet. Not out of indifference, but because every person was holding their breath. Shannon Kirky stood and looked to the judge. The prosecution rests. Outside the courthouse, someone tried to ask Emily what it felt like to testify. She didn't answer. She just walked past the cameras, past the microphones, past the strangers who would never understand. Only when the car door closed did she breathe. Again, Laura reached over and took her hand. "You were incredible." "I wasn't brave," Emily said. "I was angry. That's still strength." Emily looked out the window. "He doesn't get to keep me anymore, even in memory." Ernest's defense was simple, almost insultingly so. He claimed he believed the world was ending, that he thought he was saving them, that his behavior, while severe, came from a place of distorted protection. The defense psychiatrist took the stand and described Ernest as delusional, but not dangerous. His journals, the doctor said, reveal a man who believed himself to be the last moral guardian in a collapsing world. Shannon Kirky rose for cross-examination. "Did you read the messages he sent Emily's mother?" she asked. "The photoshopped images? The threats?" The psychiatrist hesitated. "I did not examine that material in depth." "Then allow me to show you." She displayed the photos Laura had received. The altered image of Emily with the pig's head. It's a threatening message. Does this look like the act of a confused man trying to protect a child, or the calculated torment of someone trying to cover his tracks? The psychiatrist didn't answer. He didn't need to. The final day of testimony brought a surprise witness, Vance Holloway, the property owner. He appeared via video from Zurich. "I hired Ernest as a contractor when I was building the property," Vance said. "He worked under the table. Cash only. I never filed a tax form for him. That was my mistake." "Did you know anything about what he was doing?" "Absolutely not," Vance said. "I didn't even know he had a key after I moved." Overseas. Laura watched the screen, jaw tight. She had always suspected Vance wasn't entirely innocent. Maybe he hadn't known about the girls, but he'd left the house in Ernest's hands. No background checks, no oversight. Still, he hadn't buried the bike that had been Ernest, alone. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Each hour felt like a century. Emily didn't leave the house. She watched the coverage on mute, sitting on the couch, painting in silence. One canvas after another, fields, skies, open doors. On the 3rd afternoon, the phone rang. Harlan's voice was calm. "Verdict's in." The courtroom was standing room. Only Laura held Emily's hand. Ernest sat in the same spot, eyes downcast, his mouth tight. The 4 persons stood. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ernest Allen Mallory, guilty on all counts. Laura exhaled. Emily didn't move. The judge addressed the court. Sentencing will be held in 30 days. The defendant is remanded to custody without bail. As Ernest was escorted out, he turned once. For a fraction of a second, his eyes found Emily's. She stared back, her expression unreadable. Then she turned away outside. Reporters screamed questions. Emily paused on the steps, looked directly at the cameras, and said, "This isn't justice. It's just the end of his part in my story." Then she walked into the sunlight. That evening, Cedarbrook Hollow held a vigil. It wasn't planned. It simply happened. Dozens of neighbors showed up outside the house, candles in hand. Cards, posters. Laura stepped outside, stunned, and then a voice began to sing, softly, then louder. It was the Old Town Lullaby, a song they used to teach kids. In the elementary school Emily once attended, Emily stepped out onto the porch. She didn't cry. She just stood among them, her candle flickering, her eyes wide with something fragile but growing, a sense of belonging, not just to her mother or to herself, but to the world. In bed that night, Emily rolled onto her side and whispered, "Can I ask you something?" Laura, already half asleep, nodded. Double quotes, "Why did you keep living in this house?" Laura turned her head. "Because I knew one day you might come back." Emily was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "Thank you." The nightmare came that night. Emily woke up gasping, fingers clawing the sheets. Laura rushed into the room and sat on the bed. "It's okay," she said over and over. "You're safe." Emily's heart pounded. Her throat ached. "I was back." "In the bunker," she whispered. "But you were there. We're locked in, and I couldn't get you out." Laura pulled her into a hug. "That's not going to happen." Emily gripped her mother tightly. "I still feel like it's in me, like he's in me." Laura kissed her temple. "He's not. You're clean. You're whole." Emily buried her face in her mother's shoulder. And finally, she wept. The weeks after the verdict settled into a rhythm neither Emily nor Laura had expected. Quiet days. Longer walks. Tea steeped slowly in pockets of stillness that felt more solid than anything in the last 12 years. Emily still had nightmares, but they came less frequently. Sometimes she could sleep until morning without jolting upright. Sometimes the media's interest hadn't fully waned, but it had shifted. They wanted follow-ups, profiles, reunions. Morning shows offered money for exclusive interviews. Emily refused all of them. She wasn't ready for her survival to be turned into spectacle. Kayla and Juliana felt the same.
Ow.
They stayed in contact. Excess, mostly, sometimes a call. But the three had an unspoken understanding. Healing didn't come in the spotlight. It came slowly, in the background with patience. Laura, on the other hand, had trouble relaxing. The trial had ended. Ernest had been found guilty on all counts in lawful imprisonment, child endangerment, psychological abuse. Trafficking conspiracy and more, but sentencing still loomed. 30 days, that was what the court had said. 30 days to determine what a decade of stolen childhoods was worth in the eyes of justice, and in that waiting, something stirred that Laura hadn't anticipated. Paranoia. She double-checked the locks every night. She left lights on in hallways.
She
Jumped at every delivery truck and unknown number. The sense that something had been left undone nagged at her, like an unfinished puzzle with one vital piece still hidden under the couch. And then, 2 weeks after the verdict, a letter arrived. No return address, just a single sheet of paper, typewritten. Folded neatly, it read, "The concrete wasn't the only thing buried. Look closer." He had help. Laura's hands trembled. She turned the page over. Nothing on the back. She immediately called Harland. The detective arrived an hour later. Trench coat soaked from rain, his face tighter than usual. He read the letter twice, then a third time. There's no DNA. No fingerprints. No postmark. Probably hand-delivered. "Again, do you think it's real?" Laura asked. "I don't know yet. It could be someone looking for attention. Could be a crackpot. Or it could mean we missed something," Laura said. Harlan sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Ernest said nothing during trial, didn't name a single accomplice. And his devices didn't point to anyone else local. Maybe he didn't trust them enough to keep records. Maybe, Harlan admitted. Or maybe someone helped him once and thought it was over, till it wasn't. Emily stepped into the room then, her arms crossed tightly. "I heard," she said, "someone else might have been involved." Harlan hesitated. "We don't know. It could be nothing. It might not be," she said. "I want to know." Harlan brought in a small task force. Quiet. No press. They started by re-interviewing everyone connected to the Holloway property. Past contractors, delivery drivers, landscapers, utility workers, Airbnb guests who had written vague reviews about weird smells or locked rooms over the years. One of them, a woman named Denise Lone, stayed at the house for 2 weeks in 2018. She was a writer working on a memoir and had taken dozens of photographs of the property, including the garage. One showed the floor slightly sunken at the center. She'd even captioned it in her blog post. "Weird dip in the concrete. Bad pour?" She also remembered the caretaker. Older guy. Didn't talk much. Always wore gloves, said his name was Mr. Ernest. "What made you remember him?" Harland asked. "He had a limp," she said, "and he always smelled like bleach. But the garage had been sealed. She never saw inside, until she found the image again, and noticed something else. In the corner of the photo, barely visible, was a second man, not Ernest, younger, wearing a black hoodie. Carrying what looked like a cement mixer attachment, Emily stared at the photo on Harlan's phone. "That's not Ernest," she said. "No." "Do we know who it is?" "Not yet, but we're working on it." "Show Kayla and Jules," Emily said. "Maybe they saw him."
Yes.
Kayla recognized him immediately. He used to bring the food.
Alan's head snapped up.
What do you
"Mean once or twice a month?" Ernest would say we had to be quiet because his friend was coming. We never saw him clearly, but once I peeked. She took the phone, pointed to the photo. "That's him." Juliana confirmed the same story. He came at night, always carried plastic bins, and wore boots. Heavy ones. You could hear them through the floor. Did Ernest ever call him by? Name. Kayla shook her head. "Just the delivery man." A composite sketch was made. Harlan's team cross-checked it with background records from the Holloway estate. Plumbing permits, contractor lists. One name came up multiple times. Benny Langford, age 47, former handyman. No recent address. Last known employment? Unlicensed. Septic tank repair company that had since dissolved. The search began, and for the first time in weeks, Laura noticed the fear creeping back into Emily's eyes. That night, Emily sat on the back porch blanket. Wrapped around her shoulders, the trees rustled gently in the wind. Somewhere far off, a dog barked. Laura brought her a cup of tea. "They're looking for him now," she said softly. Emily nodded. "He was real. I always knew it. I just didn't know if anyone would believe me. They do now." Emily sipped her tea. "He never spoke," she said. "But one time, just once, he handed me a note." Laura froze. "What did it say?" Emily looked down. "Stay quiet. He doesn't know what I know." Harlan knocked on the door. The next morning, "We found him," he said. Benny Langford had been living under an alias in the outskirts of Eugene, Oregon, working at an auto salvage yard, paid in cash. No ID. Fake name on payroll. Brent L. He'd been arrested trying to flee out the back window of his trailer. They brought him to Cedarbrook Hollow that night. Emily didn't sleep. Laura didn't either. In the interrogation room, Benny was evasive, jittery. He denied involvement, claimed he only ever helped Ernest with repairs, said he had no idea what was happening in the bunker. But then Harlan showed him the photo, the one from the Airbnb guests blog, and his face changed. That's when he asked for a deal. "What?" Benny revealed, shook everything loose. Ernest had blackmailed him years earlier. Benny had been caught breaking into a home with a known trafficker. Charges were dropped, but Ernest had been watching, had photos. Proof. He offered Benny a choice: help with deliveries or have the photos. Sent to the police, Benny agreed. He claimed he never entered the bunker, never touched the girls, but he admitted to delivering food, supplies, medication, and once helping Ernest pour a second concrete slab deeper beneath the garage floor. "Why?" Harlan asked. Benny hesitated. He said it was insurance. Insurance for what? In case they found the first one. That same week, ground beneath the garage was excavated again. 3 feet below the original bike burial site, they found another slab, and beneath that, was a metal box inside it. Files, photos, names, hundreds of names. Some were aliases, others were real. All girls, all missing. It was Ernest's ledger, his private collection, a log of targets, and in the margins. One name repeated, Emily Forrester circled, underlined over and over. Laura read the file once and voted. Harlan closed the box. "We have what we need," he said. Emily wasn't told every detail, but she knew enough. "He was never going to let us go," she said one night. "Even if the house burned down. Even if he got caught. That was his favorite game." Laura reached for her hand. "You won," she said softly. Emily looked out the window. "No, I escaped. But the game's still being played." The sentencing hearing was set for March 2nd, nearly a year since the bike had been found under the concrete slab. Nearly a year since Emily had been pulled from the darkness. Cedarbrook Hollow prepared as if a storm was coming. Streets were closed near the courthouse. Extra barricades went up. Journalists from as far as Germany and South Korea flew in. The town's population doubled in one weekend. Emily stayed home. She didn't want to watch it unfold in real time. She didn't need to hear the sentence to know what she had lost. But Laura sat in the front row. She wore a navy dress and the same pendant she'd worn too. Emily's third-grade recital, the last time life had felt unbreakable. Harlan sat beside her. Across the aisle, Ernest Mallory was escorted into the courtroom in full shackles. He was thinner. His beard had grayed. His eyes scanned the room like a man searching for exits that no longer existed. The judge read the sentence in a clear, unshaken voice. For the crimes of unlawful imprisonment, endangering the welfare of minors, psychological abuse, trafficking, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice, this court sentences the defendant to 5 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. The courtroom did not erupt. It exhaled. A long, collective release that didn't sound like joy or victory but survival. Laura closed her eyes and whispered, "Can't hurt her anymore." Emily watched the live stream later that night, alone. In her room, lights off, blanket pulled to her chest. She watched the judge. She watched her mother. She watched Ernest as he turned toward the gallery scanning faces, and saw that no one was looking back with sympathy. And she saw, in the tightness of his mouth, the downward twitch of his eye, the first flicker of recognition. He had become powerless. She paused the video, stared at his face frozen on screen. Then she closed the laptop and never opened it again the following week. Benny Langford was charged with accessory to multiple felonies. His plea deal meant less time than he deserved, 10 years, with eligibility for parole in 7, but it also meant more files recovered, more names, or missing girls linked back to the ring. Emily didn't go to that hearing. She didn't say his name again. Instead, she poured herself into something else, something quieter, something alive. She applied to community college under her middle name, Marie. Enrolled in a part-time art therapy course. Told no one at first, not even Laura, but Laura found the brochure in the kitchen drawer one morning and smiled. Didn't say anything, just circled the course list and wrote at the top, "You'd be amazing at any of these." Emily blushed when she saw it, but she left the paper there. She began painting not just for herself, but for others. One canvas was donated to the hospital abstract colors. Swirling into a silhouette of a girl on a bike under a stormy sky, the staff didn't know she had painted it. Only Laura and Harlan did. Kayla started writing, not a book, just notes, pages of memories. Pieced together with trembling hands, she sent some of them to Emily. One note read, "I used to mouth the words. 2 songs at night. I couldn't hear the music, but I could remember how they felt. I don't think that's weird. I think that's survival." Emily replied with a drawing. 3 girls standing on a hillside made of broken clocks. Juliana started therapy school online. They all healed in fragments, but those fragments began to shape something whole. Harlan visited less frequently. The case was closed, but one afternoon he showed up with a box. "This was in the basement archives," he said. "I thought you should have it. It was the original box from the garage. It's the one with Emily's bike. Cleaned now, sanitized. The pink handlebar ribbon still frayed. A rusted chain, bent spokes." Emily ran her hand over it slowly. "You sure? I should see this." Harlan shrugged. "Only if you want to." She stared at the bike for a long time. Then she whispered, "He buried it thinking it would never come back." She looked up, but it did. "I did." Harlan smiled faintly. "I think that's the real story." Spring came late to Cedar Brook Hollow that year. Snow clung longer to the pines. The air stayed cold deep into March. But one morning Laura stepped outside to find Emily in the backyard, barefoot in the grass, planting bulbs beside the porch steps. "You're going to freeze," she said, laughing. Emily just smiled. "I want to see what comes up." The last press request came in a thick envelope. National TV, prime time. A 6-part docuseries. "Your story," the letter read, "deserves to be heard." Emily read it once, then tossed it in the fireplace without comment. She didn't want the world to consume her story. She wanted to live it. In April, on the anniversary of the day her bike was found, Emily stood at the edge of the garage where it had been buried. The concrete had been replaced. The floor was smooth now, clean, no cracks. She knelt, placed her hand flat against it, and whispered, "Goodbye." Emily's world grew slowly, one small circle at a time. At first, she went only from the house to the bakery, then to class and back again. She kept her eyes low, her shoulders square, always aware of exits, always alert for footsteps behind her. But with each passing month, her body unlearned a little more of the old tension. In her art therapy course, she kept quiet at first. She sat in the back, never volunteered answers, avoided eye contact, till the class on trauma symbols. The instructor showed a slideshow, drawings by children in crisis zones, patients recovering from abuse, survivors of war. And there, near the middle, a sketch so familiar it made her heart stop. A door with no knob. Emily had drawn it herself, years ago. Deep underground. She had hidden it beneath her mattress. She remembered the charcoal pencil, the paper stolen from Ernest's desk. A door they could never open. The instructor moved on, but Emily raised her hand. "That drawing," she said, voice soft but steady. "That was mine." The room went silent. The instructor blinked. "I'm sorry." Emily didn't repeat herself. She stood up, walked to the front, pointed at the image. "I drew that. I was 12. We weren't allowed to have art. We made charcoal from burnt beans. We told stories by scratching walls." The other students stared. Emily felt the burn of 20 sets of eyes on her, but she didn't shrink. "I survived 12 years in a bunker. Art kept me human." The instructor sat down. "I'd like to hear more," she said quietly, and for the first time,
Emily
began to tell her story, not to the media, not in court, not to detectives, but to people who didn't know her, didn't need her pain, weren't there to dissect or profit. They were there to understand. That night, she emailed Kayla and Juliana. Just one line. "I said it out loud today." No one looked away. Juliana wrote back with a photo of her dog licking peanut butter off a spoon. Kayla sent a voice memo. Her voice was low, tired, but smiling. "I'm proud of you. I still can't go out in crowds. But I planted sunflowers today. You said they're strong. I think maybe I am too." Emily cried when she heard it, not from pain, from proof. Summer came, and Cedarbrook Hollow bloomed in wild color everywhere Emily walked. She saw pieces of her former life rebuilt. The park where she'd learned to skate, now with new benches. The creek where she'd once fallen in chasing frogs, now fenced and marked as a nature trail. On the first truly warm day, she visited her old school. She walked past the red doors and peered through the windows. New children sat at desks. She remembered. The mural she'd helped paint in second grade was still on the hallway wall, faded but untouched. She smiled. She'd left fingerprints there. She still existed, even in places she thought had forgotten her. Harlan called one afternoon with news. "Got confirmation from Interpol," he said. "The ledger we found under the garage, it cracked open a dozen missing persons cases. 3 girls recovered, 2 traffickers arrested, 1 whole subnetwork dismantled." He paused. "Double quotes, Emily. You didn't just survive. You changed the map." She was silent for a long time. Then, that ledger. It felt like a nightmare come true. "Life. I know. But if it helped someone else wake up, maybe it wasn't just horror." Harlan's voice was thick. "You're something else, kid. Not a kid anymore," she said softly. "No," he agreed. "You're not." Laura watched her daughter change. Little by little, she no longer flinched when the phone rang. She sang sometimes, just under her breath, while brushing her hair or folding laundry. And one day, she laughed in her sleep. Laura cried quietly when she heard it. Then came the letter, addressed to Emily, handwritten. No return name. Inside, "I saw your name in the news. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for proving me wrong. It's no signature. just a drawing of a paper boat at the bottom corner. Emily folded it carefully, slipped it into the box where she kept the other letters. Ones she never answered, but could never throw away. The survivors were finding each other at the art therapy summer exhibition. Emily submitted a triptych, 3 panels. The first, a girl on a bicycle, riding toward a dark tunnel. The second, the tunnel stretching into deep blackness, with hands reaching up from the floor, clawing for light. The third, the girl again, older now, standing in a garden shadows behind her. Color blooming ahead, people cried when they saw it. One woman touched Emily's arm and whispered, "You gave me hope for my daughter." Another simply said, "I see myself." Emily didn't speak much that night. She just stood by her work, letting the world come to her, letting it see her. At home, Laura kept baking pies mostly. Peach, cherry, lemon, meringue. The house smelled like memory. One day she found Emily staring at the bookshelf, fingers running across the spines. "What are you looking for?" Laura asked. "I used to have a diary," Emily said. From second grade, it had a key. Laura turned. "I found it," she said. "In the attic. I was too scared to open it. I thought, if I read it, it might make things harder." Emily nodded slowly. "Maybe it will. But maybe it'll remind me who I was before all this." Laura retrieved it that night. The cover was soft pink, corners bent, the little plastic key still dangling from the ribbon. Emily opened it carefully. The first page read, "I'm Emily. I'm 8. I love bikes, cereal, my mom, and outer space." The next line, "When I grow up, I want to be someone who helps people remember things they forgot." Emily closed the book, her eyes shining. "You did," Laura whispered. "It became exactly that." The next day, Emily rode her bike down the same street where she had disappeared 12 years earlier. Different bike, different girl. She passed the mailbox where the neighborhood kids used to tape stickers. Past the tall elm that once dropped a branch in a storm and scared the whole block. Past the intersection where she'd last been seen, and kept going this time. She didn't look over her shoulder. The anniversary approached quietly. 12 years to the day since Emily had vanished. 1 full year since she had returned. No balloons, no parties, no press conference. Just a single candle lit in the living room window. Laura had made a pie. Emily had painted a small canvas of her own hands, almond palms up, with gold thread tangled in the fingers. "This," she said, "is what it felt like when I remembered I was real." She hung it in the hallway across from the bathroom mirror, where she would see it every morning. Her own hands, her own thread, her own beginning. She had begun to speak at select schools, only small groups, only when she was ready. She never used Ernest's name, never described the bunker in full. But she told the truth. "I'm not a victim," she said once, standing in front of 20 high school students in folding chairs. "I'm a person who was taken, and I'm a person who came back." One boy asked, "How do you sleep now?" Emily smiled faintly. With the window open, another girl raised her hand. "What if you're still scared?" "I am," Emily said most of the time, "but I do it anyway." After the talk, one girl waited until the room cleared out. She was shaking, but she handed Emily a note. Later, when Emily unfolded it, it read, "He was my stepdad. I've never told anyone, but I'm going to now, because of you." Emily pressed the paper to her chest and cried in the school parking lot, not from sorrow, from a sense of being necessary. Juliana moved to Colorado. Enrolled full-time in a clinical psychology program, she sent Emily a photo of her new apartment, complete with string lights and an unkillable cactus she named Ernie in mockery of the past. Kayla came to visit in June. She was quieter now. But when she saw Laura, she hugged her like a second mother. When she saw Emily, she held on even longer. They spent the weekend cooking, sitting in the garden, braiding each other's hair. Kayla had dyed hers green. Emily's heart ached with pride. "I like the color," she said. Kayla smirked. "It's poison ivy chic." Emily laughed for a full minute. It felt like rain after a drought. One morning, Emily received a letter postmarked from out of state. It was from the mother of one of the missing girls listed in Ernest's ledger. Sophia Lanning, age 11, disappeared in 2010. The letter read, "They never found her. But because of you, we now know who took her. I just wanted you to know your name is sacred in our house. You gave us the truth, even when it hurt." Emily framed the letter and placed it on her desk. Next to it, she kept a photograph, a drawing. She'd done in the bunker of 3 girls in cloaks, standing on a mountaintop, arms raised toward the stars. She'd drawn that when she was 13. Hope had still lived somewhere in her, and now she was living it. That summer, Laura sold the Holloway house. She and Emily moved into a smaller one, closer to town. 2 bedrooms, pale green shutters, a porch swing Laura insisted on hanging the first day. Emily helped paint the mailbox yellow. It looked like something from a storybook. They never spoke about the garage again. Some things didn't need to be revisited to be understood. One night in July, Emily woke up with her chest tight. Not fear, not dread, something else. She went to the window. The street was quiet. A light breeze rolled through the maples. She stepped outside, barefoot, and stood in the driveway. Her shadow stretched behind her. The stars blinked above, and suddenly she whispered, "I forgive you." Didn't say who it was for. Ernest? Herself? The world? It didn't matter. The weight shifted, and she felt truly. Finally dash-free, she started writing her own book, not a memoir, not a survival guide, just a story about a girl who rides a bike into the woods and finds a forgotten city underground, about loss and memory and thread, about how some doors don't need keys. They need hands brave enough to push. She didn't pitch it to anyone yet. It wasn't finished. But she wrote every night. And when Laura peeked in and asked, "Want tea?" Emily would smile and say, "After one more paragraph." On the 1-year mark of her return, Harland invited them to a community event. No speeches, no reporters, just a private garden unveiling behind the local library. He handed Emily a small plaque. She turned it over in her hands. "In honor of the ones who came back, and for the ones still missing, hope lives here." It was fixed to the bench beneath the largest tree. Emily sat there for an hour after. Everyone left, just her. Birdsong above, sunlight cutting through the leaves, and on her lap a notebook full of blank pages, waiting for her to choose how the story went next. It was the little things that changed first. Emily no longer stared at doorknobs before turning them. She walked into grocery stores without calculating the distance to the nearest exit. She stopped counting steps between her room and the kitchen. Stopped. Bracing herself for sounds that never came. The past hadn't disappeared, but it no longer controlled the script. She could edit her own lines now. Fall arrived in Cedarbrook Hollow with golden trees and long afternoons. Emily had grown fond of silence. Not the bunker silence, dead and heavy, but real silence. Leaves brushing windows, pages turning, water boiling, her own voice humming under her breath while she painted. She was making a new series for large canvases, one for each season. The autumn piece was almost done. A girl kneeling in fallen leaves, her face turned upward, hands full of feathers drifting away. Freedom wasn't loud. It was quiet, patient. Unfolding inch by inch, Laura had taken a job at the local historical society. She gave tours once a week, cataloged artifacts, and wrote grant proposals in the evenings. The house they'd moved into was finally home. The kitchen had mismatched mugs. The porch had ivy creeping up the rail. There was a leak in the upstairs sink, but Laura refused to call it a problem. "I like the sound," she told Emily. "Reminds me the pipes are still working." Emily laughed. That's one way to think about it. One evening, as they made tea together, Laura turned serious. "I've been thinking about writing something," she said. Emily raised an eyebrow. "You? A book or a blog?" "What? Something? For parents of missing kids? Not about you, exactly. About the waiting. What to do with yourself when time gets too loud?" Emily sipped her tea. "I think people would read that. Laura smiled, then frowned. Do you mind? No, Emily said. It's your story too. Emily's book, not the one about the trauma, but the one with the girl in the hidden city, was nearly finished. She had rewritten the ending 3 times. First, the girl escaped and returned home. Second, the girl burned the city down. Third, the girl stayed underground and made something beautiful out of the ruins. But none of them felt right, so she tried again. This time, the girl came back, and instead of running from the place that had changed her, she built a bridge above it, so others could cross safely in early November. Emily received a package, no return address. Inside, a small journal, handmade leather cover, pages stitched by hand, no name. But a note inside the front cover read, I found your name at the right time. You didn't know me, but you reminded me I was still here. Thank you for surviving. Taped to the back was a single Polaroid, a girl in her 20s standing beside a river, holding a paper lantern. On the lantern, Emily's name, written in silver ink. Emily held it to her chest. Another one found at a winter support meeting. Emily sat in a circle of 7. Each person had a different story. Some talked, some didn't. Some wept openly. Others just nodded. When it came to her turn, she said only, I'm Emily. I was gone. Now I'm not, and I'm still figuring it out. The man beside her whispered, that's enough. And it was Laura hosted Thanksgiving that year. Just them, Kayla, and Juliana. 3 pies. Mismatched plates, too many candles, they toasted too. Anything and everything. 2 sunflowers, Kayla said. 2 green hair and cactus plants, Juliana added. 2? Not running anymore, Emily whispered. Laura raised her glass last. To the ones who stayed, she said, her voice thick, and the ones who never stopped hoping. They clinked glasses late that night after the others had gone to bed. Emily and Laura sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets. The street was quiet. Stars were clear. I'm thinking of applying to finish my degree, Emily said. To art. Therapy. Maybe one day I can work with kids like us, Laura smiled. You already do. Emily looked at her. I mean professionally. Laura nudged her knee. Go for it. Silence again. Then Emily asked, Did you ever think we'd get here? Laura answered without hesitation. Every single day. The snow came early that year. Thick, heavy, beautiful. The kind that blanketed the town. Made it feel like the world was holding its breath. Emily stood at the window, watching flakes drift past the porch light. She reached for her sketchbook. On the first blank page, she drew a small girl on a bike. Not in darkness, not in danger, just riding, hair flying behind her, face lit by stars. No fear. No wait, free, she added one last detail, a road stretching forward and beside it wildflowers. Growing through the cracks,